Hi, everybody. Welcome to this video. My name is Ron Reed. I'm a professional resume writer based here on Long Island. Today, I'm going to be providing a workshop giving you advice about how to revamp and make improvements to your resume. I'm going to be providing you with best practices so that you can take your resume to the next level and make it as good as it can be. Before I jump into this seminar, I just want to give you a little bit of background about myself. This way you understand how I'm qualified to provide these services. So my company is called Reed Resumes, reedresumes.com. I launched my business around 6 years ago on a very part-time basis while I was a full-time recruiter. So I have, altogether, I have around 10, 11 years of recruiting experience. I've recruited both in the city and here on Long Island. And again, around 6 years ago, on a very part-time basis, I started my own resume writing business. That became busier and busier, and then eventually, several years ago, I took the resume writing business full-time. So I'm a certified professional resume writer. This is what I do for a living. I eat, sleep, and breathe resumes. So without further ado, again, thank you so much for watching this workshop. So the title of the workshop, as you can see here, is Resume Revamp. Learn tips, techniques, and tricks to revamp that resume and get your skills noticed to potentially land your next gig. So we'll jump right in here. Okay, so what exactly is a resume? I know this sounds like a really basic question, but I think this is important to sort of set the tone for the entire workshop here. So a lot of people view a resume as just sort of a laundry list of work history, right? These are the companies I worked with, these were my job titles, and these are some of the things that I did at those jobs. Sure, a resume includes that information, but a resume is actually much more. A resume is a piece of marketing. It's your commercial, okay? It's a document that you can use to showcase skills, showcase qualifications, and most importantly, this is a very important word, a great effective resume will showcase correlations, right? Correlations between your skills, your experience, your areas of expertise, your qualifications, and the requirements of the job that you're applying to. And a little bit later in this workshop, I'm going to show you how you can effectively showcase those correlations so that somebody picking up your resume in a few seconds can make the correlation between you and the job that they have available. Keep in mind, a resume is not a legal document. So although we never want to lie in a resume, at the same time, you're not obligated to divulge every single piece of information that is, pertinent to your life story. You don't need to include every single job you've ever held, from the time you were in junior high school. It's a piece of marketing, so we want to showcase relevant experiences that correlate. Again, you're going to hear me say that word correlate a lot during this presentation. So I think to build out a resume properly, I think it's important to understand who's ultimately reading your resume and what's going through their mind and how they're finding resumes and the methods they're using to source candidates. That's the word that we use in the recruiting world, sourcing candidates, finding job candidates to fill their job openings. So the first thing we need to understand is that recruiters are very overwhelmed. The reason I say this is when you apply to a job opportunity, keep in mind there's probably 100 resumes on top of yours and another 100 below yours. So recruiters are very overwhelmed, and understanding that context is important. When a recruiter looks at a stack of resumes for the first time, believe it or not, their main goal is usually to eliminate resumes. So what they're doing is they're giving a resume a really quick scan, and literally within 5 to 10 seconds, they're determining, yes, this person is in the ballpark, they will go in this pile. Or very quickly they're determining, no, this person is not in the ballpark, and they're going to the no pile. So again, on the first review, the recruiter's goal is to get that large stack of resumes. Let's just call it 200 resumes. Their goal is to get that stack down to a much more manageable, like 30 to 50 resumes. And then that smaller stack will get a much more in-depth review. So how are recruiters locating these resumes? Well, job seekers are typically going to the traditional job boards, so places like ZipRecruiter, Monster, Indeed, CareerBuilder, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. And that's where recruiters are going as well, right? That they're just using the, they're on the other side of the computer, if you will. So they're using those databases. They're also using their own personal networks. Internal employees are making referrals, making candidate referrals. So that's how recruiters are typically tracking down their job applicants. I think it's important to understand that most companies are using applicant tracking software. We call them ATS. You'll see that right here. So anytime that you apply through a company's website, maybe on their career pages on their website, or when you submit a job application through an online application, more than likely your resume is going through an ATS, an applicant tracking system. And this is important to understand, and I'm going to dive into it in just a second. This is important to understand because applicant tracking systems are essentially gatekeepers. They're gatekeepers in the sense that applicant tracking systems are set up to scan your resume for certain keywords. And as it's scanning for those keywords, it's basically determining if you're qualified for the job or not. And if your resume is considered qualified by the applicant tracking system, then you'll get pushed forward to an actual human recruiter who will give your resume a more in-depth review. It's basically companies using an applicant tracking system is a company's way of sorting through a high volume of resumes very quickly, and then sending out an automatic rejection letter, or handing it off to a human recruiter. It's viewed as just more efficient from the company's human resources perspective. I think another thing to consider, again, as we're trying to understand our audience and how they operate, our audience being recruiters, I think it's important to understand, why do jobs exist ultimately? So job openings exist when a company has a problem to solve, right? It could be that they need to make more money. It could mean a job could be open because a company is spending too much money. Maybe they need more efficiency. Maybe they need somebody who can come in and problem solve and streamline operations, make things more efficient, which would result in time savings or cost savings or both, etc. Maybe they want to enhance customer service. There's a million different possible problems that could exist, why a job would be created, but ultimately jobs become available to solve a problem. So I think that's important to understand, because when you're creating your resume, you want to showcase that you are the person who can solve their problem. Very important to understand that. And again, correlations, that word correlations, I love this word here. You want to showcase your correlations. Oh, company ABC, you have these problems? Well, I have these skills, and I can solve those problems because I possess these skills. Okay, so my next slide, what I want to discuss here are the rules of resume writing. So to be perfectly honest with you, there's actually very few must-follow rules when it comes to resume writing. There's a lot, resume writing is an art and a science. It's a science in the sense that there are a handful of rules that you must follow, and those are the things that I'm going to go over here. But it's very much an art form as well, in the sense that there's a lot of opinion, you have a lot of flexibility and free reign about decision making when crafting your resume. But here are some rules that I want you to absolutely follow. And if you follow these rules, you're going to be ahead of a lot of your competition, because as simple and basic as these rules may sound, a lot of your competition are not following these rules. And again, just following these simple rules will make you stand out. So rule number one, no spelling errors, absolutely no spelling errors. So in the era of spell check, it's completely unacceptable to put out a resume that has spelling errors. Now keep in mind, spell check won't necessarily catch all spelling errors, because some words are spelled, some words that sound the same are spelled differently, right? Like for example, for and for, right? F-O-R or F-O-U-R, for example. A spell check won't catch that spelling error. So what I would advise is, before sending your resume out to any employers or potential employers, definitely have at least two people that you trust review your resume. It's always a great idea to have a fresh pair of eyes take a look at your resume, because typically when you write your own resume, you're too attached to it, you're too in the weeds, and there's a very good chance that you won't catch mistakes that you're making. So definitely bring in at least 2 people to review your resume and catch those spelling errors. You also want to make sure that your formatting is consistent. So what I mean by that is, if for company A, if you're putting that font in bold font, then for company B and C, you want to make that font bold as well. If your job title, if you put your job title in italics for company A, you want your job title to be italics for company B and C as well. That might sound trivial, but when you don't have consistent formatting, the reader will assume that it's a mistake, and then they'll start to question your attention to detail, how diligent you are, how organized you are, and they'll just start to question your general sort of how you value the quality of work, right? If you're willing to put out a resume which has inconsistencies and errors, and the resume is a representation of you, that will raise red flags, about how your quality of work could be. So don't give the recruiters any ammunition. Don't give them anything to hold against you for something as silly as a spelling error or a formatting inconsistency. So piggybacking on formatting, I think a great idea is to use both bolding and italics to help guide the reader's eye. So in just a few minutes, I'll be showing you a resume example where I'll show you how to do this appropriately. But by bolding certain pieces of content, by putting italics on certain pieces of content, by not bolding other content, what you do is you allow the reader's eye to really pick out and isolate certain pieces of content and essentially navigate your document very easily. So I'll show you how to do that in just a few minutes. You also want to make sure to use clear, distinguishable headlines to separate the resume's various sections. So let me actually jump over to a sample resume for just a moment and show you what I'm talking about when I mention clear, distinguishable headlines. So for example, if we look at this sample resume over here, a clear, distinguishable headline would be like professional experience, and then down here we have education. Okay, so it's just very easy for the reader to navigate that document and know exactly what they're looking at. So the next point I want to make here is about font. So I always prefer that my clients use very professional, clean, contemporary fonts, and I listed some sample fonts over here that I just absolutely love using. Kind of nerdy, but Constantia, Gill Sans MT, Century Gothic. I love Franklin Gothic's another one. Arial's a very, very clean, simple font. And then when it comes to the size of the font, typically I'm between size 10 and 12. There's certain fonts where you can go down to 9.5, but absolutely nothing lower than that, or else the recruiters going to need to break out a magnifying glass, and we certainly don't want to do that. And then any font above the size 12, honestly, it's just too large. It will come off almost cartoonish. So I advise against that. The only exception is your name at the top of your resume. The name at the top of your resume can certainly be something between like size 15 and 20, just so it stands out. It's your name, it leads the document. In regards to the margins around the document, so typically the top and bottom margins, somewhere between 0.4 of an inch and 1 inch, usually somewhere right in the middle. And on the sides of the document, the left and right sides, I'm 0.6 to 1 inch on the sides. So you definitely don't want your margins to be too thin, or else the resume will look very overwhelming. Without that white space around the borders of the document, it will look just like a lot of words, and the reader will get overwhelmed. So these are the margins that I recommend here. And then my next point, this is something I sort of mentioned a little bit earlier, but landing an interview is hard enough on its own. Even with a perfect resume, landing an interview is very challenging. So don't make silly errors, like I pointed out here. Don't give the recruiter ammunition to hold against you. Having a perfect resume is one of the very few things that you can actually control about a job search. So since this is in your control, you want to make sure to control it. This is your one part of the interview process where you actually have quite a bit of power. So definitely put forth a flawless resume. Again, correlations, I keep bringing up this word. You want to make sure that you're highlighting the key correlations between your background and the job's qualifications. And what we'll do in just a few minutes is I'll actually put up on the screen here, I will put up a sample job ad, a job posting, and I'll put up a resume and I'll show you how I made the correlation, and you can hopefully use that as a guide moving forward. And perhaps most importantly, what a great resume does is it showcases your accomplishments, okay? The most mediocre resumes are simply a running list of tasks where you're showcasing responsibilities, right? Your bullet points essentially say, I do this, I do that, I do this, I do that. What a great resume does is it certainly talks about your responsibilities and your day-to-day tasks, but you also want to include content that showcases you as somebody who makes an impact at your employers. And in just a few minutes, I will show you the formula for how to develop an accomplishment-driven bullet point. Bullet points that will demonstrate you as somebody who brings value to your employers, somebody who doesn't just clock in and clock out, but somebody who makes an impact, somebody who has accomplishments and achievements that you can brag about, essentially. All right, so next slide. I thought this was kind of interesting here. So believe it or not, there was actually a study conducted about how a recruiter typically reads a resume. And I don't know if you could see this on the screen here, but this is a map that tracked the eye movements of many recruiters. So this is basically a map following the trends of how recruiters tend to move around a document. And again, I don't know if you can see behind the yellow and the red and the blue here, but on the left-hand side here, this is a resume with very poor formatting. It basically is not following the rules that I laid out on the last slide. It doesn't have clear distinguishable headlines. It is not using bolding and italics appropriately. It's just not an easy to read document. And the document here on the right side does. Hopefully you can see that, but it has a very clear headline here. I see a professional experience headline. I see an education headline. I see a lot of bolding and unbolding. It's just very easy to read. And what you'll notice is if you look at the eye patterns of the recruiters shut down. They stopped reading around halfway through the document, which is super interesting. So what that tells me is that because this resume lacked quality formatting, the reader just got overwhelmed. You know, they couldn't figure out this resume because it was not laid out properly. So they just stopped reading. They shut down right around here. On the other hand, this resume that's formatted beautifully, you'll see the recruiter actually made it all the way to the bottom because it's just such an easy document to read. It was laid out clearly. The story was, you know, clear as day, and therefore the recruiter made it all the way to the end. So I thought this was a really powerful visual. The proof is in the pudding. When a resume is laid out clearly, when it's an easy read, when it's easy on the eye, the recruiter will literally make it to the end of the document, and that's the goal. We don't want the recruiter shutting down. So as you're structuring and formatting your resume, remember this visual here. Very, very important. Okay, my next slide. So this is what I was mentioning just a few moments ago, that the most successful resumes balance tasks with accomplishments. And accomplishments are even more powerful when you can quantify them, when you can attach like a numeric outcome to the task. So for example, here's a sample. This is a great bullet point. This is an example of a great bullet point. Negotiated bulk material discounts netting a savings of $500K, right? So let's break down this example here. So on a very mediocre resume, the bullet point would say negotiated bulk material discounts, right? On a better bullet point, on a more improved bullet point, the bullet point would say negotiated bulk material discounts netting savings. An incredible and compelling bullet point is exactly what we have here. The task is I negotiated bulk material discounts, and the outcome which I'm now quantifying, is I netted savings of $500K. Very, very powerful, very compelling bullet point by attaching the quantifiable outcome to the end. So what I would advise you to do is, as you're building out your bullet points on your resume, go through this exercise for each bullet point. It's very simple. I did A, the task, which resulted in B, the outcome. And when possible, quantify that outcome, okay? And what I did, I provided a list of what accomplishments are typically revolve around, in a business setting. So in a business setting, an accomplishment is typically anytime you generate revenue, anytime you increase profit, anytime that you save costs, anytime that you develop staff. So what I mean by that is, if you're in a management position and the staff that report to you, if they receive promotions, or they make moves within the organization, and you're sort of a mentor or training them and helping them get to that point, you certainly want to showcase that. Anytime that you create an efficiency or streamline a process, and then if there's any cost savings or time savings associated with that, you would certainly want to showcase that on your resume. And then if your line of work doesn't really fit the bill for anything I mentioned here, just think, what's the ultimate purpose of my work? Why does my employer pay me? What am I supposed to be accomplishing? And then that's what you want to showcase in your bullet points. Ask yourself, what value do or did I deliver to my current and former employees? And ask that question. That will help guide you to develop this content. Okay, and then last but not least, as I promised earlier, I want to show you this sample job posting and sample resume that I put together. And I think this is a great visual, because what I attempted to accomplish here was to create correlations between the job posting and the requirements of the job posting and the resume that I constructed. And my ultimate goal was to create a resume where the recruiter handling this job opening would see this resume and within seconds would know, yes, this applicant is in the ballpark for the position I have available. In a few seconds, they would understand that this applicant is most likely qualified for this opening. So let's go through this. So here on the left-hand side, this is the job posting. So what I did was I went through the job posting, I reviewed the job posting, and as you can see, I highlighted what I determined to be sort of the core qualifications of this job posting. So this company is seeking a B2B sales professional. So B2B means business to business. That's a salesperson that's selling to businesses as opposed to individual consumers. They want somebody who can manage and expand a sales territory, somebody who is comfortable delivering sales presentations, somebody who can actually close the business. So meaning they not only can identify the sales opportunity, but they're skilled enough to close the sale as well, and then also provide ongoing account management after the sale was closed. They also want somebody who can negotiate contracts and who has used the database Salesforce before. That's a CRM, a customer relationship management tool. Down at the bottom, again, they mentioned Salesforce CRM again, and they would also love to see proficiency in Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So again, after reading this whole job description, the highlighted points are what I determined were probably the hot buttons, what this recruiter was really looking for. So here on the right-hand side, this was the resume that I created in response to this job posting. And again, the word is correlations. When I created this resume, I did my best to create clear correlations between what this sample candidate was capable of and what this job on the left requires. So let's take a look. So again, right off the bat, they're looking for a B2B sales professional. So in my headline here, that's the first thing that I pointed out. I wrote business to business, parentheses, B2B sales, right? So I'm making it abundantly clear that, hey, I meet your key qualification, and I'm making that clear immediately. They also want somebody who can manage and expand a territory. So also in my headline, I point out territory management, okay? You'll also notice in the intro of the first position, UPS Mail Innovations, in this intro sentence, I mentioned, you know, top performing B2B sales professional representing UPS Mail Innovation shipping solutions to small and medium-sized businesses across the South Carolina, North Carolina territory. So here, again, I'm also reiterating and repeating the B2B aspect of my background and the territory management aspect of my background. Okay, so somebody who's comfortable delivering sales presentations. So here, I created an areas of expertise section, and I mentioned sales presentations here. Somebody who can close new business and account and manage accounts, right? So new business development, account retention. I mentioned account management up here on the headline. Okay, driving sales growth, converting ownership and C-level decision makers, a relationship builder, right? So immediately I'm addressing the key requirements of the job here. Somebody who can negotiate contracts, contract negotiation, right up here. Bam. Okay. Somebody who is comfortable using Salesforce, and again, down here, Salesforce CRM. So what I did was, at the bottom of the resume, I included a computer skills section where I not only showcased Salesforce, but I also included their desire to hire somebody who's proficient in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So hopefully you agree. I think I did the trick here. And again, my goal was to create those obvious correlations so that a recruiter could look at this resume for 5 to 10 seconds and immediately know, yes, this candidate is highly qualified for the job that I have open, and they're certainly worth a second, more in-depth review. I'm definitely going to put them in the yes pile. That's really the only job of the resume. You want it formatted properly so that at a quick review, you're getting to that yes pile so that you can get that second, more in-depth review where the recruiter will read through it more thoroughly. So that's it for the presentation today. Again, my name is Ron Reed. I'm Long Island's premier certified professional resume writer and president of readresumes.com. If you have any questions, absolutely feel free to shoot me an email. My email is on my website. It was also on the first slide of this presentation. So thank you so much, and happy job searching.